Make better money choices. Choose a bank that takes your money seriously. Business Watch is brought to you by Nedbank.
All right, it's 2 p.m. Central African time. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you for choosing us once again this afternoon. You are tuned in to Eswatini TV, and you are about to enjoy Nedbank Business Watch. On the program today, we want to discuss something that is often cited as the most powerful tool for financial growth, and that is the topic around investing or investment. We are in conversation with Zamangwane Dlamini, the head of branch networks from Nedbank Eswatini, as she lets you in into how you can start where you are, grow your money with confidence, and partner with a bank that understands your financial journey, and that is Nedbank Eswatini. That conversation in detail later on the program. And of course, we do have our market analysis with the Treasury Department from Nedbank Eswatini later on the program, so stay with us for that.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. This is Nedbank Business Watch. We are live on our YouTube page, Eswatini TV. The 2-week U.S.-Israel-Iran ceasefire is likely to have a positive impact on Eswatini's economy as it may stabilize global oil prices and reduce uncertainty in the market. The Central Bank of Eswatini had warned that the conflict could slow economic growth by up to 1%, primarily through supply chain disruptions, inflation, and financial market volatility. Sanil Sbia joins us in studio to unpack the impact of the ceasefire to Eswatini. Do stay with us. For now, let's go to our first story, our business news.
Digital helps you make cross-border payments. Human gives you global specialists. Digital allows you to apply for a loan anytime, anywhere. Human connects you to credit experts. Digital puts you in control of your money, while Human connects you to wealth advisors. Digital allows you to freeze, unfreeze, cancel, and reorder your card. Human gives you that personal touch. Digital when you want it. Human when you need it. Get the complete private banking experience with Nedbank Private Clients.
Welcome back. This is Nedbank Business Watch, and now for our business news.
We take you into the Investment Promotion Authority of Eswatini, where the Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority has reported that Eswatini's import and export performance for the year 2025, that is from January to December, based on data from the Eswatini Revenue Service, reflects steady progress that is toward the target of 50 billion emalangeni exports by the year 2030. Now, total trade reached 88.6 billion emalangeni, with exports at 45.8 billion emalangeni and imports at 42.8 billion emalangeni. All of it resulting in a trade surplus of 3 billion emalangeni. However, several challenges remain. Although exports are increasing, growth has slowed to 2.5%, and that is largely due to a contraction in sugar as well as other key exports. Rising global trade uncertainty, including reciprocal tariffs with the United States of America, continues to pose risks. That is increasing protectionism through reshoring, and inshoring is reshaping supply chains. Over-reliance on a few products leaves the economy vulnerable to shocks, and a high concentration in a single market further heightens exposure to external pressures. Now, part of Eswatini's most exported products include odoriferous substances and cane or beet sugar, leading at 8.05 billion emalangeni, followed by chemical products at 6.27 billion emalangeni. Other key exports include men's woven garments at 2.18 billion emalangeni, wood sewn lengthwise at 1.738 billion emalangeni, and banknotes and stamps at 1.71 billion emalangeni. Some of the countries where Eswatini exports to include South Africa, Taiwan, United Kingdom, and Mozambique, to name a few.
The Eswatini Energy Regulatory Authority is equipping fuel retailers with essential knowledge on fuel supply and service quality standard. Speaking at the George Hotel, Petroleum Engineering Manager Thokozani Mvubu highlighted the critical role these standards play in ensuring reliability and customer satisfaction.
We have just called our retailers as our key stakeholders, particularly in the supply chain of fuel. And mainly the deliberations are around the introduction of a couple of standards that are meant to improve the service offering of the industry towards the public. And really typical issues are around how they best service the customer, how they ensure they attend to complaints of the customer, how we ensure that fuel flows in smoothly within the required turnaround times to their sites. It's very important that each time there's a new standard that's introduced, there is an approach towards implementing it, because normally it comes in bulk and there's several requirements. So the first part is assessing where we are, and then taking each clause bit by bit and ensuring that we are able to make sure the critical provisions, one, the stakeholders are aware of what they need to meet, and they are given adequate time to readjust themselves so that they are able to adequately meet that requirement. Some requirements require that there's some investment, there's some budgets allocated to it. So the whole purposes of familiarizing the stakeholders on the standards is that they have adequate time to prepare themselves, and we also are in constant engagement with them, and we give them the appropriate deadline to say from this point we are fully enforcing the standard implementation, because we have understood where they are, what needs to be done, and the capacity that needs to be developed for that standard to be executed appropriately. So part of this drive is to make sure that we capacitate them, we give them enough information that will allow them to assess themselves where they are and prepare themselves for the implementation process.
All right, thank you for staying with us. That is how we mark the end of our business news.
All right, and after the break, we're joined by the co-founder of the Eswatini Cassava Agri-Industrial Center, Isaac Nafo. Stay with us.
To all the viewers of Eswatini TV in the kingdom and beyond. Eswatini TV is regulated by the Eswatini Communications Commission through the Broadcasting Code and Broadcasting Guidelines. Under these instruments, the station commits to broadcasting information and news that have been fact-checked, programs and content in respectful language with no elements of hate speech, violence or sexual activity. If you hear any unsuitable content on this channel, you have a right to voice your complaints with the station management. Should you not be satisfied with the response or action taken, you can escalate your matter to the Communications Commission at PO Box 7811 Babani. Call 2406 7000 or send an email to info@esccom.org.za. For more information, visit www.esccom.org.za.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. This is Nedbank Business Watch. Eswatini is kicking off a 740 million Malengeni cassava commercialization program designed to support smallholder farmers and integrate them into export-oriented value chains. This initiative is led by the Eswatini Cassava Agri-Industrial Center in partnership with Triumph Eswatini. Dr. Isaac Nafo, who's a co-director of the Eswatini Cassava Agri-Industrial Center, joins us to unpack this project and explain how it will strengthen agriculture and export opportunities throughout the country. A very good afternoon, Dr. Isaac, and welcome to Nedbank Business Watch. I've just been made aware that Nedbank Eswatini sponsored this project. Tell us more about this project and why cassava in Eswatini.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the audience. Cassava is we call it a perfect plant. In fact, in Africa, it's called the white gold, because countries that was on the verge of bankruptcy turns up to be AAA or A-rated credit facilities. Cassava is a plant that actually can grow anywhere. Any condition, whether the soil is bad or good, salinity, acidity, so it makes it much easier on the farmer to grow it. Yes, if the terms is better for the plant, like if you add irrigation, if you add fertilizer, if you add other goods that improve the living of the plant, you'll get better result, better yield. When we're talking on yield, and that's where this plant is so perfect, anything from the plant is being used. There is no, like in tomatoes, you'll have 40% rejected, not going into the fresh market. Meantime, in the cassava, anything from the leaves going to animal feed, going to spinach. People can eat, it's very healthy, very nutrition. The stems can be used for replanting or for making bricks, bricks for walls, making fire bricks. The roots is used, even the peeling. When you peel the potato, you use the peeling for animal feed, you use it for citric acid, for Coca-Cola. The potato itself, you use for flour, you use for starch. Endless opportunity for industries. We're looking at like 1,500 different products, You're looking at even competition inside the product. Who wants to get more? Like the breweries or the fuel, biofuel. Suddenly it becomes one of the most promising plants for biofuel.
Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's talk about farmers. You know, this will certainly diversify the country's agricultural sector and, of course, be beneficial to farmers. It is a huge project with 740 million Malengeni. Let's talk about, you know, the benefits to farmers and the country as well.
First, I must correct you. It's not a huge project. 740, when you translate to dollar, is $40 million.
Only 40 million,
it's a small project, first of all. But it's a beautiful start. It's a start that will never end. I hope in my lifetime, I'm not that young, that I will still see what I'm aiming to 60,000 hectares. In fact, we'll be, if you compare to the sugar industry, the same size. We are not competing with the sugar. The problem with sugar right now is that it's a monocrop. If something will happen, a disease or something that will wipe the crop, the whole industry will disappear. We are actually balancing. We're coming as a second crop, that in case there is problem, we're still there. So the advantage for the farmer, you know, I'm doing quite lots of work for United Nations. In fact, the idea of Agriculture Industrial Center was developed for FAO here in Eswatini. And what we're doing is we're putting a group of farmers under what we call a co-op or contract farming. So the farmer as individual is protected. Now he's in a group. So he owns a share in that company. Secondly, the crops that we're using, it's the instruction from United Nations must be crops that have the component of food security and job creating. what we're creating here is amazing. As a food security, you can plant 2-3 plants in your garden. I'm not talking now farm. Garden at home. And you have potatoes for the rest of the year. Any day you chop what you need. That's food security deluxe. Secondly, you're talking on job creation. It's not only the farm workers, the factory workers. It's all those small businesses that coming out of this flour creating or starch creating, many, from making breads to making bricks to fuel to many businesses.
Yeah. So the farmers must be excited about this project. So will the center tap into regional markets?
You know, I can't tell you how many phone calls I got from the meeting of yesterday. You can see my eyes. I didn't sleep. They're phoning me, friends, not even from the industry, doctors, medical doctors that I know, calling me. They saw that video and they want to know how they can join. Everybody is very excited.
Okay. So what are the projections for the earnings of this project?
Now, as I said, you can make money from anything, but let's talk just flour. You know, with these stories of Russia fighting Ukraine, you get very big shortage of flour to make bread because each one is bombing their own shipment ships. We're saying just from the flour, we're looking at a hectare of cassava making 100 tons of fresh cassava.
Okay.
30% of it is flour. It means 30 tons of flour or 30,000 kilos flour. A kilo of flour is $1. 30,000 US dollar profit for the farmer. Sorry, not for the farmer, call it for the operation, 30,000. The farmers gets about 10 imalangeni per kilo. So if he's producing that 100 tons, make your calculation, 10 times 100,000.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of money per hectare for the farmer, not for the factory level. In the factory, still have a share, because we're giving shares for the farmers that is going to be part of the project, so he gets a second income.
All right, so will they be training, you know, with such a huge project?
Training must
comes
come.
With a lot of responsibility.
Yes, training must come. You know, cassava is one of the easiest crop to farm or to grow. You take a stick, you throw it on the ground, you come 3 weeks later, you see a plant. It's not about we're going to train you to grow we're going to train you the right way to grow it to make money. I'm giving you an example. The average yield in the world is anything between 20 tons to 40 tons, max 40 tons per hectare cassava. In the way we're doing it, we're getting 100 tons cassava. Do you understand the difference?
Yeah.
That is where training comes in, is to teach you the way to make the higher yield with the same terms and conditions than other farmers is doing it. For example, we're irrigating. We're irrigating with drip irrigation. Nobody irrigates around the world. They all rely on rain. Our drip irrigation, we don't put it from the top. We put it under, next to the root zone. When you irrigate from the top or when you have rain and it falls on the leaves, it makes it to fall to the side. So it doesn't really come where it needs to come. So it shows you that just a simple trick can increase completely the yield. We're looking at a plant that must make for us 10 kilos. Meantime, I can show you varieties that can make 130 kilos for one plant. So 10 kilos per plant is not much. Our the plant standing in the ground is 10,000. 10,000 by 10 kilos, there's your 100 tons per hectare. It's very simple thing. We're not inventing the wheel, but we're making the wheel go smoother.
Okay. As mentioned, Doctor, that, you know, farmers are quite excited about this project, and I presume they want to start working. They want to start, you know, being in the field. So when can you anticipate for this project to kick off?
We are busy negotiating with Nedbank for... Yes, sorry, Nedbank.
Yes.
Mrs. Fekile, the big boss. They are talking about giving us money for a demo farm. That demo farm is going to be actually producing the plant material for the 1,500 hectares for the project. So it's really any time now that we're going to start. We're looking also into buying a factory. This is actually the heart of a project. I'm just coming back from Uganda, where I consult. 70% of their agriculture is cassava, but they're failing. And when I looked at what's their problem, it's very simple. They don't have a factory. You can't do commercial farming on cassava if you don't have the heart of a project, which is a factory. And a small secret, there is a build-up factory here in Eswatini, in Sipofaneni, that was built a few years back for the same project that was very successful, but somehow for other reason it stopped. The factory is still there. We can start tomorrow.
So is the 800 hectares enough, Dr. Isaac?
No, definitely
Still
not.
More.
The 800 hectares was donated by thanks to the Minister of Agriculture. Thank him for, he's supporting us very, very well. But the idea is to make the 800 as the commercial farming. Commercial farming is a farm that balances the supply of the small-scale farmers. We wouldn't get this money if we don't have small-scale farmers. This is actually, call it, to help the farmers of Eswatini more, because it's come from the government of Israel, the funding. So we won't get it if we're not helping others. To enrich a rich man, they won't give that money. So the idea of the 800 is to put a balancing farm for the supply of the farmer to the factory. The rest must be from them. And we're saying a minimum of a project to start with is 1,500 hectares. So as this moment, as we're talking, we need about 700 from small-scale farmers, but we won't limit. If they will come 10,000, 20,000, we'll take them. We'll be very happy.
Okay, as you said, you've been receiving phone calls from farmers. And how do more interested farmers get into contact with you if they want to be part of the project?
Well, they can call me, of course, on my number, 78540234.
Okay.
Otherwise, of course, saki3@gmail.com. And I have my local partners. I just don't know their numbers. If you want, I can...
Yeah, no, we'll get them later. Yeah, all right. Thank you so much, Dr. Isaac,
Thank you very much
for that information. That was co-founder of the Eswatini Cassava Agri-Industrial Center, kicking off a project that will benefit farmers, local farmers in the country. This project is worth over 700 million malangeni. Let's go find a break. We return shortly. If you're watching Nedbank Business Watch, thank you for staying with us. The United States, Israel and Iran have agreed to a 2-week ceasefire in the Middle East conflict, a conditional pause in fighting that also includes a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, a key global oil route. This comes after weeks of military action that disrupted global energy markets and sent oil prices spiking before falling sharply on news of the ceasefire. For Eswatini, an import-dependent economy, fluctuations in global fuel and energy prices matter here at home. Higher oil prices can drive up transport and production costs for local businesses, pushing up expenses for goods and services and straining household budgets. Early market responses to the ceasefire, including lower crude prices, could ease some of these cost pressures if stability holds. We're now joined by economist Sanile Sbiya to unpack what this means for Eswatini and local businesses. A very good afternoon, Sanile. Thank you for joining us here on Business Watch. You know, the 2 weeks ceasefire is expected to provide temporary relief to Eswatini's economy, which has been under pressure from rising fuel and food costs. What is the projected impact on the country and local businesses, Mr. Sbiya?
Good afternoon to you, and also good afternoon to the viewers. So what we are seeing is this announcement of a temporary ceasefire for the next 2 weeks while the US and Iran continue working on a long-term and a sustainable deal. So what this means for the local economy, Lungelele, is we do expect oil to continue flowing for the next couple of 2 weeks through the Strait of Hormuz, even though it is not yet clear on how those logistics will be handled. So that 2-week flow in terms of the oil and the 30% of the fertilizer that flows through the Strait of Hormuz does give a bit of hope to commerce across the globe, and that has been signaled in the price of Brent crude oil. If you look at it, it's currently trading around $92 per barrel, down from $110 per barrel yesterday. So the announcement has actually had quite market impacts on the oil market, with the hope that we should get oil moving for the next couple of weeks, and that should somehow ease the supply pressures that we are seeing across the globe. So what this means for Eswatini is, we do expect to have a bit of a predictable supply, or at least have oil leaving the Strait of Hormuz headed for all these multiple countries within the next 2 weeks. Because what it doesn't mean that now that the Strait of Hormuz is supposedly open, we are then going to have oil supplies restored. So it takes right about 2 months for these big oil tankers to move, or a month to move to Africa, and around 2 months to move to the US and the Western countries. So we do expect that, yes, in the current period for the next 2 to 3 weeks, we should expect the situation to stay as it is. But the hope is that, Lungelele, even if this ceasefire doesn't hold after these 2 weeks, if we've had those oil tankers leave and pass through the Strait of Hormuz within these 2 weeks, then that's a fuel that will sustain and give us a buffer in the next couple of months. But yeah, we are hopeful for a long-term deal, because that is actually going to continue driving the prices of oil down, and also at the same time continue driving the prices of fertilizers down, and that's going to make it for quite a predictable inflation cycle going into June and July.
You know, the ceasefire, as you say, Mr. Sbiya, that it may bring some stability. Be that as it may, should businesses stay cautious, during the 2 weeks, even after the 2-week ceasefire?
So these 2 weeks are going to be quite critical, Lungelele, because what we are hoping for is a long-term end to the hostilities. So these 2 weeks, what we are looking for is signals on whether we are getting to an agreement or to a deal between the US, Israel, and Iran, and whatever that outcome will be on the Strait of Hormuz. Because what has market impacts on the global economy is that Strait of Hormuz, not the fact that there is fighting in Iran. Because remember, Iranian oil was under heavy sanctions across the globe, so it doesn't make much sense for the world to really move to Iranian oil supply. But what we are looking out for is whatever deal that is going to be struck, what are the impacts going to be on the Strait of Hormuz. So yes, we do need to be watching out for those news, and also hoping that we get a long-term ceasefire. Like I said, the 2 weeks is going to give us a window, Lungelele, to at least move a couple of tankers out of the Strait of Hormuz. And now what that means is, coming into May, we should have a relative steady flow of fuel because quite a number of tanks are expected to traverse through the Strait of Hormuz during this week of a ceasefire. But what really matters the most, Lungelele, is what are we going to have coming out of these next 2 weeks? Are we going to get to a long-term ceasefire and an end to all hostilities? Now, that's where relief is going to come from. But within these 2 weeks, we are looking at temporary relief that will get to the continent towards the end of April, and that's going to somehow smooth our fuel consumption for the month of May. And if we do not get anything concrete coming out in the next 2 weeks, that means in July we should be back right about in the same situation. But if we get this long-term relief and long-term ceasefire, then we should expect things to return to normalcy right around June to July going forward into the year.
Yeah, all right. So Business Eswatini had warned Mr. Spear that, you know, the soaring fuel costs were driving up the cost of living. So will this pause help mitigate inflation of food and essential goods?
The short answer, Lungelele, is the 2 week ceasefire in itself will not mitigate those. But what happens is what happens afterwards. The reason I'm saying that, Lungelele, is if within the next 2 weeks we are not getting the ceasefire extended for longer periods, what it's simply going to mean is we are going to be in the same situation as we were before these 2 weeks. And whatever fuel that would have actually left the Strait of Hormuz is likely going to also be, rationed rationed. And once you get to that situation, remember that oil contracts are priced in the future prices. So if markets are anticipating a surge in those oil prices, then eventually after these 2 weeks, we will see the spike go up again to the above 100 mark if there isn't a long-term ceasefire deal. So in terms of the impact, this 2 weeks is not going to have much of an impact on expectations because it is expectations that are going to drive this cost of living pressures. But what we are going to have is a relief within the next 2 weeks, and most likely going to have stable fuel in the month of May. But if we get a long-term ceasefire, now that is what is going to begin driving long-term inflation down and easing the cost of living pressures.
Right. Thank you, Sanele, for that insight on this 2 weeks ceasefire. We go for a net break. We return with our program.
Welcome back. You're still watching Nedbank Business Watch. Thank you so much for staying with us. Our conversation today with Head of Branch Networks from Nedbank Eswatini, Zamangwane, is centered around investing, which is one of the very essential topics, but very overlooked in most cases. And a modern poet, which is a rapper, has said before that scared money doesn't make money. So you do want to invest your money. So let's demystify the myths around investing and make you motivated to invest whatever it is that you are saving on the side. Zamangwane, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Perhaps I want us to start here. Nedbank loves to interact with customers across different income levels, right? Are you seeing a shift in how the ordinary Liswati or how the ordinary Emaswati view investing in particular?
Good afternoon, Mnguni. Thanks for having me. I think your quote just is running through my mind. Yes, we are seeing a shift in how eMaSwati view money. In fact, we really appreciate that the conversations are happening. The conversations must happen. I think money is relatively tight for all of us. And as Nedbank, we believe that we are the financial experts. So we always want to help customers and consumers understand how to manage their money better and also how to grow their money. I've mentioned that money is tight. So, of course, we start to think of how do I get to save for the future? How do I make a saving when an expense goes up? Or we're in a situation now where we're seeing even fuel prices are going up. So in turn, even the cost of goods will certainly go up. eMaSwati are alive and conscious to what options do I have and how far does my money take me currently? Yeah,
a very tight fiscal space for almost everyone, and you're right on that one. But there's often the conversation around starting small. Yeah. You know, and, you know, I want to understand how Nedbank is enabling its customers there to really begin investing even with the modest amounts.
I think you are touching on it with respect to some of the misconceptions that people would have around investing. One would typically assume that you need to have a lot of money to start investing. Yes. But to your point, you just do need to start small. So in terms of if you have maybe 300 malangeni or 500 malangeni, it is important that you actually start putting away what you can actually afford. And over time, that amount grows as long as you maintain consistency. And it will help you to fulfill and close some of these fiscal gaps that you are mentioning, or also moves you a step closer in terms of some of your financial goals and aspirations.
Absolutely. From a Nedbank perspective, how do you help clients understand the difference between saving and investing and why both are important?
Yeah, so savings and investments are closely related. Sometimes it's difficult to make a distinction, but the key difference is that they're usually for different purposes. So saving is typically for your short-term needs in terms of your short-term financial goals, so that's either you're saving for a holiday, you're saving for some immediate expense, school fees, uniform, groceries even, and even if we're saving for a full tank for every end of the month. Whereas investment is more of a long-term goal. So that's when you are saving for bigger financial goals, whether you want to buy a car or make a hefty deposit on a car or a property purchase, as an example. So basically, we say that it's important to have both of them because they serve different purposes. Short term, in the savings, maybe for your emergency kind of expenses that may arise. You don't know what will happen at any point in time, so you want to create a buffer for yourself. Absolutely. And then investments as well, it serves a different purpose because you have a specific long-term goal that you want to attain and you work consistently to get to it. Yeah, and so how do you propose Nedbank comes into the play now in supporting its customers in building that, what you call a balance between short-term financial security as well as long-term financial or wealth creation? I think it's important to have conversations with yourself that are honest with respect to how you want to, what you want to attain. Is it wealth creation that you want to attain? And then, or is it an immediate cushion like we've spoken to? And what are you actually saving or investing for? So in terms of what we present as the bank is basically options that fit different risk appetites. Our risk appetites may not be the same between Zama and Sfiso. Yes. Our goals may also not be the same with respect to what we are saving for and how long we want to save for. So those are the key things that you would want to actually ask yourself and align in that. But in terms of the offerings, of course, there's a spectrum of options that fit those different variables to say, is it short-term, long-term savings accounts, notice deposit accounts, fixed deposits accounts, retirement annuity, unit trusts, and shares. All of those are options that build wealth creation or create a buffer depending on your immediate need.
Let's talk to that first-time investor walking into a Nedbank branch today or tomorrow, whatever. How do your teams then guide them in choosing the right product for their needs? I mean, you mentioned a plethora of products there.
So I believe that your need is actually what helps us to determine. Remember, I did say that we are financial experts, and we also want to help you create your financial risk.
Yeah.
But underpinning that, the initial guidance would be to say, start simple, with as minimal or as low a risk as possible. So these options can include, fixing your money for a fixed term, which means putting away the money and knowing that you're earning an interest. You're earning interest or compounded interest over a period of time. Or a notice deposit account. That's more medium term, to say, I'm going to put away funds for a certain period of time, and I'll give the bank notice when I want those. But those funds, whilst they're placed there, are actually earning you a return, as opposed to sitting in your purse or under a mattress.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's often a conversation around time and discipline. And that's very key in investing, right? That's what you say.
Yeah.
How would you say Nedbank then encourages and supports a culture of consistent investing among its clients?
I would say that you mentioned the element of time, and probably time is the best indicator and probably the most powerful tool to have. Time is always of the essence, and we always say start early and start consistently. Because the benefit of investing is that you earn the interest, and when you earn, you then start to earn compound interest. Yes. So what that means is that you earn interest on the fixed amount that you've invested, and then you earn interest on the interest that it's earned as well. So if someone starts saving at 20 years old, over time, even if they are saving smaller amounts vis-a-vis someone who might start saving or investing at the age of 40, as an example, but they're putting in larger sums, you would find that the one who started much earlier with the smaller amounts is actually making more based off of the time elements, because their interest has compounded significantly. So that is where then the time element comes in, to say you start to grow your wealth more. And the consistency ensures that this wealth is actually growing consistently as well. Yeah.
So while you speak to that 20-year-old. I love the example. You're making an example of a 20-year-old and a 40-year-old, and you break down how compound interest can be life saving for both of them, but particularly for the one who started early. And it just makes me wonder, because we often hear people who get into employment early say, I want to enjoy my money first. And, do you want to talk to that person, that young person right now?
I do want to talk to that young person. I mean, just last month we were coming from the Global Money Week, where we raised awareness on this. I do want to talk to the young person, because there's not a right time, if I may say. The only right time is now, or immediately, when you come to that realization. Though I made the example of the 40-year-old, it doesn't mean that we can't start today. And also, it doesn't mean that you have to start investing with a large sum of money, or I can't afford it, or I'm just not the investing type, etc., whatever you may tell yourself. Yeah. But I would say, yes, start small. If you want to enjoy your money, and you're enjoying your money as the 20-year-old, then surely you want to enjoy your money for a longer period.
Absolutely.
So you want to create a fund for your enjoyment. Make it be consistent. Allow yourself to have a consistent life of enjoying. So I would recommend that they absolutely do save. They've just started working, like you've said. They consider options of short-term and long and medium-term type of investments. They create emergency funds at a minimum, so that should the fund go a little bit lopsided, they have a cushion.
Absolutely.
to bail them out, if you may. So I would recommend that they just maintain the consistency. There are various options in the market, and there are various options that are sold by banks and financial institutions that would fit that profile of a customer. So it's all about, once again, determining your needs. What does that 20-year-old want in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Or what do they want in 6 months or a year? That's part of this enjoyment phase.
Absolutely. So I take it that next to time, the next critical thing is discipline.
Correct.
Because that then informs the consistency, and the consistency is essential, as you put it, right? But from your experience, what would you say are some of the most common mistakes that your customers make? And then how does Nedbank come into the play now to make sure that these people avoid these pitfalls?
Yeah, I think we've just touched on some of these. Common mistakes. It's the voices in your head to say, actually, I don't make enough money. I'll start investing when I make more money, or I'll start next year. And we're having a conversation at an apt time. It's Q2. Let's review our, what do they call them? Goals.
Yes.
What are the goals that you've put in for the year? Let's take stock. Am I still on track? Am I still doing what I wanted to do? Are my financial aspirations still in order? And it's okay to start over. So do start over, and any time is appropriate time. But also, I do want to stress that the longer you have or listen to these voices or delay, then you lose the element of time that we've just spoken to.
Yeah.
Which means that the value or the creation and wealth that you're trying to build or create is also slightly impacted. But that's not to say that you can't build the consistency and add additional income into your savings and investments.
Absolutely.
But those are the common mistakes that we find. We also find that people may not understand risks, the risks associated with some investment options. So I would also encourage customers to do their due diligence, to research, to find out what works for them, to understand how the products work for them. I mean, we see a lot of cases of bofaqata, as an example, where you know, something seems too good to be true. Invest 300 and we will triple your money in 2 weeks.
Just, come on now. Yeah.
So those kinds of examples should be red flags and triggers of going off. So you have to be sure that you understand the risks. You have to be sure that you are comfortable with the risk you're taking in terms of the appetite. When will you get your returns? How long will your money sit there? And do you understand what potential risk there could be there with respect to the interest that you earn and the like? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I take it quarterly reviews, if you will, of your goals, very, very essential. But also being realistic about your goals and ambitions, very essential as well. Imposter syndrome, you know, that time that is delayed, you're saying it's not denied, but it's very important to know how to have that conversation with yourself. And I think if you're able to, you know, vet those mistakes and make an informed decisions, then you'll be good. I want to give you just one last opportunity to speak on whatever I may have forgotten to ask you about, because we're done with this conversation.
Yeah, I think I want to reiterate the 3 things that we spoke about with respect to choosing your investments. Reevaluate what's your financial goal. That's the first one. So you must make sure that you determine what is your goal. Also, how long are you willing to put your money aside for? So is it short term? Are we saving for emergency, or are we saving for a long-term goal? And then how much flexibility do you need? Will you need the money immediately, now, or how would you want to access your funds? And how would you want to contribute to your funds? So those are the 3 main things that I would highlight in terms of the selection or the choosing of investment options, and then the consistency. Keep in mind the consistency, the diligence, the discipline that we've spoken about. It doesn't help. Your quote is talking about risk to some extent, but also we see a note that, you know, you'll put away some money in a savings pot or whatever the case may be, but when you feel like, I'm really broke and it's a week before payday, so you start to tap into that, and that sort of erodes the discipline, because part of the discipline is invest, tuck the money away, but also learn to live within what is then remaining. That's why we encourage that you save what is affordable to your pockets. Don't overstretch yourself.
Overstretch yourself.
Yes.
Absolutely. Zama, thank you so much for your time. Zamangwane Dlamini, Head of Branch Networks from Nedbank Eswatini, decided the most powerful tool for financial growth, and that is investing. And there you have the conversation. You can make an informed decision as you invest, whatever it is that you can invest. Very important. Let's go for a net break. The show continues when we return. Welcome back. You are watching Nedbank Business Watch, our market analysis now with Sanziswa from Nedbank's Treasury Department. And we want to look at the numbers which have taken a sharp turn overnight this week, driven by a major geopolitical movement. And he's going to help us really just drill into all of those. Maybe let's start with currencies, because the rand here is strengthening quite sharply. What are the news here?
Yes. No, good afternoon to you, Sfiso, and good afternoon to your viewers. As you have rightfully mentioned, we have seen a big sharp overnight, and this is because yesterday, during the day, we had a lot of, there were a lot of tensions between the US and Iran because an agreement was not reached. So Trump was threatening Iran that he will almost wipe the whole country out before end of day. But this morning we woke up to the news that they have reached an agreement, a ceasefire that will last 2 weeks, and this is on the condition that they will also open up the Strait of Hormuz, which we know that it is very significant to the supply of oil to the rest of the world. So the rand have strengthened against all major currencies. Currently we are trading at 16.42 against the US dollar. We closed at 16.94 yesterday, so we have seen that appreciation of about 50 cents overnight. This is mainly because most investors are now moving away from the safe haven assets, which the US dollar falls under that category, and the euro together with GBP. So these developments have helped the rand strengthen. But we are still yet to see if this is sustainable, because this is a 2-week truce. But this gives a room for further negotiations, maybe a longer-lasting peace between the two countries. But this is just a ceasefire between US, Israel, and Iran. I think the president of Israel have mentioned that this is specifically for that war. They are still continuing to bomb Lebanon at the moment, which is also part of the Middle East, and that's keeping up the uncertainty around the region. Yeah,
I want us to talk about oil, because oil prices have also dropped like really significantly, almost overnight. And perhaps here, clearly it's a sharp decline. What exactly triggered it, really?
Yes, so the biggest trigger for the decline was the announcement yesterday for the ceasefire. So specifically, this comes from the fact that they are now opening the Strait of Hormuz, which was currently closed. And because that portion of the world, we see a supply of oil of around 20% of the global supply. So during this tension or during the war, Iran closes that strait and makes sure that no oil passes through. So that puts a lot of strain on the supply of oil. That's why during the war, you see prices of oil reaching levels of 140, close to, I think the highest we've seen is 142. So currently, overnight we saw a 13% decline. Currently, the oil is trading at $95 per barrel, which is below $100, which is usually the comparison mark that we use. So if you can remember, before the war, the prices of oil were around $68 per barrel. So they had almost doubled during the war. But we are seeing that sharp decline currently. And there's still a lot of caution around this because there still may be developments within the 2 weeks or even earlier. Right, yeah. Because it's a very volatile situation.
Would you say this is a very unusual drop in terms of oil prices?
It is, because it has only happened once, probably in the past decade. So it was because the market had priced in a lot of risk coming out of the war, because a lot of central banks were projecting that this war might last for we were going to project the next 2 months and reevaluate after. But the overnight agreement between the two countries is sort of giving the market hope. But this hope, as you might have noticed with gold, it's not really sucked up through the market because the price of gold is continuing to go up, which shows the lingering uncertainty in the market that not every investor is buying into this as a solution. They still anticipate that there might be further fights going forward.
If we move into equities, how would you say global equity markets have responded?
The global equities have responded quite positively. Currently, we have seen the S&P 500 going up, the FTSE 500 going up. The JSE, it's still quite stable. It's a slight drop from yesterday's prices, but this is mostly because of market openings between the two markets, the South African market and the US and Europe market. But this is because there is now appetite for risk from many investors. But the balance also comes from the fact that what we see, especially on the FTSE index, it is very exposed to energy prices. So energy prices have dropped, but we have seen that the other participants in the market in the UK have increased quite significantly. So that's why it's sort of capped. The increase wasn't major in the equities market. In the S&P, it's also the same story where we see that because the S&P is also exposed to these energy prices, that decline offsets the increase in tech stocks and other tech companies that we have seen gain. So in that instance, we have seen quite a bit from Apple jumping up. We've seen Alphabet. We've also seen Nvidia going up. So, but because of the opposite movements in the composition, we've seen that the increase is not as high.
Well, Senator, thanks so much for your time and appreciate your insights. You have been watching Nedbank Business Watch Market Analysis. We'll go for a net break now, and we'll be back shortly. Stay with us. There's 2 minutes left on the clock now before the home stretch of 1,500 hours. You have been watching Nedbank Business Watch. A big takeaway is that you really need to to invest that disposable income that you have, because scared money will not make you any money. So, yeah, be in contact with Nedbank Eswatini.
That's right. Thank you for tuning in. You are watching Nedbank Business Watch. If you've just tuned in, you can still watch this episode on our YouTube page. We'll see you next week, Wednesday at 2 p.m. Stay blessed.
Make better money choices. Choose a bank that takes your money seriously. Business Watch was brought to you by Nedbank.